Hello students, I am back for one more video of Applied English. Students, I hope you are doing well and doing great in your studies. Students, this is video number 12. In my previous video, it means in video number 11, I have given lot of doubt solving of part 1 and part 2. But here, I am not going to give any doubt solving. But here I am going to give some tips and strategies that you can see on the board that I have written. Students, we are going to discuss each of the strategies or tips without delay. Students, this is Saraswati Shishukunj-Borsad and it is Applied English. Students, when you start doing listening, what are the things that you need to keep in mind? In my previous videos, I have given a lot of tips and strategies. And even though, especially for part 1 and part 2, what are the things that you need to understand? What are the instructions that you need to follow? What are the strategies that you just consider? Definitely you will get good band in part 1 and part 2. I always give an assessment task after my video. Let's come to the strategies. Okay. The first one, read your questions. What does it mean by read your questions? Now read your question means when booklet is given to you and instructions is given. Before you start listening to the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now students, read your questions is really important. Why? Because when you start listening, listening to the conversation, when you read questions, it is really essential. And when you remember those questions, I think half of the work is done. Why? Because there are total 5 questions and time is given to you. And in that span of time, when you read 5 questions, you remember 5 questions, and when you start listening, it will be really easy for you to get the ideas and get the questions, answers. Students, and that's the reason that you need to read the questions very carefully, remember the questions, and when you do listening, you will get the correct answers. So this is the first strategy that I give. Read your questions carefully and remember. Let's move on. The second one is concentration. No matter what type of listening that you have, or maybe any skill or any module, what you need to do, you have to face a lot of concentration. That means you need to pay a lot of attention. You need to have a lot of concentration. You need to listen to the conversation very attentively, and that's the reason you will get good band. Now, concentration in a sense that what's going on from the beginning to till the question gets over, you need to have a lot of concentration. Now, you need to visualize the whole thing, the whole set, what they are talking about, why they are talking about, which is the place, about what matter they are talking about. So, just you need to raise those questions in your mind and have a lot of concentration. Yes, you will get good band in part 1 and part 2. Okay students. The third tip, multiple choice questions. Now multiple choice questions are the questions that you have one question, along with the question you have a lot of options. And out of many options, you need to select any appropriate or any correct option that you need to have. But what happens, students, out of 5 options in the conversation, they will discuss all 5 questions, but they will recommend only one that is the correct answer. But you may get confused. Why? Because when you face all 5 options, when you listen, when you have the questions, you get confused, you get confused. And you may think that this is the correct option, or may not be the third one is the correct option. But it is clearly said in the conversation which is the correct option, but you need to pay attention. And sometimes they make you confused, they say sorry in between, but what you need to have? You need to have this concentration and multiple choice questions. When you don't get at the last, what you need to do? You need to write something or the other. Why? Because when you write into an answer sheet, what you need to do? You need to write maybe any one of the options when you don't know about the options or when you don't know about any answers. Okay. Now predict your answers, but not always. Now, do you think that you need to predict your answers? Yeah, sometimes you need to predict your answers when you don't get. Mostly what happens in multiple choice questions, you have many options, and when you focus more on listening, by the time the particular answer goes or the conversation goes on and you miss, you need to predict at the last. When you transfer your answer to an answer sheet, you need to predict and write something or the other. You are not sure whether you are going to get a mark of it. So you write something or the other. Do not keep any box blank. But not always. You don't have to write or don't have to predict. You don't have to guess always. But sometimes when you don't have any options, at the last you can predict. Highlight the keywords. Now students, highlight the keywords is going to help you. Yes. Highlight the keywords is, I would say, sure it is going to help you. How? Because when you highlight the keywords, when you have some time, suppose telephone number, a place, maybe a diary or something that is being said in it, what you need to do? You need to highlight the keyword. And when you highlight the keyword, it can help you or it can make you on a particular questions a lot of concentration. Then it is very easy for you to get the question answers. Okay. The last one we have, that is instructions in advance. Now instruction in advance, why I have written at the last, why I have not written at the first? Because instructions in advance, you know that when you do this applied English listening, you come across every day these instructions that before you start your conversation, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. So you know that you have practiced, you know what are the instructions. You don't have to pay much attention on instructions in advance. Why? Because we have done a lot of practice. You know that in part 1 and part 2 what type of instructions are given. So don't waste time listening to those instructions, but you can focus more on your questions. So when you have some seconds or minute listening to those conversations that you have already know, and what you need to do, you need to focus more on answers, question answers. You can get it correct answers when you don't listen to the instructions and focus more on questions. When you read the questions, as I have said before, you will get your answers all correct. Students, focus more on questions, read questions. When you listen to the conversation, I think, as I mentioned, half work is done. And that's the reason that you don't have to much pay attention on instructions in advance. So students, I have given 6 strategies or tips of applied English listening. I hope you have understood. And after this video, I am going to give you an assessment task of part 1 and part 2. You can do listening and let me know that how much you get. Students, the next day that you get the PDF, and in the PDF you can just check your answers, that how much you have got. Students, I hope you have understood this all 5 strategies and you can start listening of an assessment task part 1 and part 2. The listening is here.
The test is in 4 parts, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only, and you will hear a conversation between 2 people talking about insecticide.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
Yes?
Oh, good morning, madam. I'm from Pestoy Market Research. I'm doing consumer research in this area. I wonder if you'd mind telling me, do you use Pestoy in your home?
Pestoy? Oh, the insecticide thing. Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I do.
What do you use it for, madam? Fleas, ants, cockroaches, woodworm?
Oh, cockroaches. This is an old house, you see, and we often get cockroaches in the kitchen. I tried scrubbing and disinfecting, but it didn't seem to do much good. And then I heard a commercial about Pestoy, so I thought I'd try that.
Was that on TV?
No, it was radio, one of those early morning shows.
You heard it advertised on the radio? Fine. And you say you use it in the kitchen. Do you use it anywhere else in the house? In the bathroom, say?
Oh, no. We've never had any trouble anywhere else. We get the odd wasp in the summer sometimes, but I don't bother about them. It's the cockroaches I don't like. Nasty, creepy, crawly things.
And you find Pestoy does the trick?
Well, yes, it's quite good. It gets rid of most of them.
How long have you been using it, madam?
Oh, let's see. About 2 years now, I think.
About 2 years. And how often do you find you have to spray?
Oh, I give the kitchen a good spray round the skirtings and under the stove, you know, about every 6 weeks.
Every 6 weeks or so, I see.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
About every 6 weeks.
Every 6 weeks or so, I see. Where do you buy your Pestoy, madam? A supermarket? Chemist?
Oh, no. I get it at the little shop at the end of this street. They stock practically everything. It means taking a bus if I want to go to the supermarket.
Well, thank you very much, madam. Oh, could I have your name, please?
Mrs. Edgerton. Mary Edgerton. That's E-G-E-R-T-O-N.
E-G-E-R-T-O-N. And the address?
The address is 12 Holly, Peterford.
12 Peterford. And may I ask your age, madam?
Oh, well, just put down I'm over 50.
As you like, Mrs. Egerton. And occupation? Housewife?
Well, I used to be a telephonist before I married. I had a very good job at the post office, but what with a husband to look after and 4 children to bring up, it doesn't leave you much time, does it?
Occupation, housewife. Well, thank you very much for your time, madam. You've been most helpful.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear a conversation between a student and an accommodation officer.
First, look at questions 11 to 14. Listen carefully.
Well, you have left things a bit late. Have you tried looking for somewhere in Newbridge?
Newbridge? No, I haven't. I've never heard of Newbridge.
Well, let me show you. I've got a map here. Here's where everything is. You come into Newbridge over the bridge, and the main road in front of you is, surprisingly enough, the High Street. This is one of the main streets. And branching off to the left, you can see there, is West Street. That is another busy part of town.
I see.
Now, as I was saying, here is the High Street, and here is West Street going left. Now, if you go along West Street, the first place you come to on your right is the supermarket. It's not a very big one, but it's got most things you're likely to need. Next to it, there's the Old Town Hall. I say the Old Town Hall because it is about 100 years old, but it will soon make way for a car park, I'm afraid. I suppose the car is king. Now, opposite the supermarket is the railway station. You can get very frequent buses and trains from here into the university. And next to that is the sports centre. It's a brand new one and was built on the site of some tennis courts. So that's progress. It's got everything the keen sportsman like yourself might require. Now, that's the centre of town, and I want to point out to you the buildings opposite the supermarket, but on the other side of London Road. There are two buildings there. The one further away from the High Street is called the Heights, and the one nearer the High Street is called the Towers.
What are they?
They are where you could find a flat. One of them, the Heights, has a number of flats for rent at the moment.
Oh, good.
Look at questions 15 to 20. You will now listen to the second part of the talk.
Now, the first one is flat 4. That's a nice flat with a balcony, and you need to apply to the Newbridge Accommodation Agency to ask about that one. You'll find their number in the phone book. Number 6 is another nice one which has been empty for a while, and you can ring the owner directly, I think. Yes, I've got her number written here. There it is.
Right, thank you.
Good. Now, number 8 is a re-advertisement.
What do you mean?
Well, it did have a tenant, but now it is for rent again, so I'd like to ask about that one. Leave it with me and I'll look into it for you. Then we can talk about it when I've got more information.
OK. Are there others in this block?
Yes, there's number 10. Now, this one's a bit strange. It's advertised with an agency as well as privately in the local paper. Normally, if it's advertised through an agency, you shouldn't really go behind the agency and go directly to the owner. But on this occasion, I suggest you just answer the advert here in the newspaper, which the owner has obviously put in.
OK.
Finally, there is number 14. This is with the New Start agency. This is an agency started by the girl who was my assistant here, and she left to make money for herself, so she's not my favourite person. But I'm afraid I would have to advise you to go through the agency anyway. Again, their number is in the phone book. All right, is that something for you to be starting with?
That's great. But what kind of place is Newbridge?
It's a nice place. It was developed about 100 years ago, really for people who worked in the factories around there. They were clothing factories and everyone worked in them, men, women, boys and girls. Then, when the factories closed down, things got very difficult for the town. There was a huge amount of unemployment until a few years ago when, in the telecoms boom, a company making mobile phones started up. I think your phone was made in Newbridge. And now this company employs most of the people in the town. There are new housing estates on the edge of the town, but they're mostly occupied by young families, and there isn't much student accommodation there. Most flats and so on are in the centre.
That sounds good.
Well, let me know how you get on.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.